There are calls for Australia to expand cooperative housing to help solve the nation's rental crisis. Two non-for-profit companies would like to see it play a bigger role in the federal government's proposed $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund, which will build 30,000 new social and affordable properties. Joining us live now is Melina Morrison, CEO of the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. Melina, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Cooperative housing is relatively unknown in Australia. Can you briefly explain to us the model?
Well, there are lots of different forms of cooperative housing, from limited equity to shared equity. But the model that we're talking about today is the rental cooperative housing model, and that puts tenants in control of their housing. They are in social housing and they're paying affordable rent. But what they're also doing is managing the property like a strata, which gives them incredible benefits, both in terms of their own education, skills, their security of tenure, but it also teaches them important things about how to have mobility over their lives, how to manage their properties. They feel like they are real owners in this situation.
Around 1% of all social housing is run by cooperatives. Why would you like to see that get to 10%, and what difference would it make?
The federal government's proposing really vital investment in secure housing, affordable housing for all Australians. We're talking about also those people on low and moderate incomes, key workers, the people who are essential to the day-to-day lives of all Australians. We must all be able to enter housing at some point on the rung. So with social housing, we're saying that if government is going to be making important public investment, they should be choosing the most successful models. And when it comes to social housing, evidence here and overseas demonstrates that the rental co-op housing model is the most successful.
Can you expand on the evidence that you are seeing overseas that this is working?
Well, in some jurisdictions overseas, it's one of the dominant ways that people get into affordable renting, particularly when it's public housing or publicly funded, such as social housing. In Denmark, for example, 20% of all of the rental housing stock in the social housing or community housing area is rental co-op housing, and the same in Canada, where it's about 16%. What we know from the research that has been done is that the maintenance costs of the building come down because tenants are involved in that maintenance. They make the sort of decisions that strata bodies do, and they're really invested in the long-term asset of their housing property. It's successful in this way to the budget, if you like, for maintaining these housing assets. But also we know that tenants have a lot of economic and well-being outcomes. They have higher educational outcomes. They are more socially mobile. They have better employment outcomes, which means that they have ways of moving into more lucrative parts of the economy, particularly in terms of employment, and getting a start on their rung of home ownership.
And what about the risks? Are there risks involved in this? What concerns are you hearing?
But there's no risks involved. We're just seeing a lack of awareness and diversity in the social housing models that are offered. And what we're saying is the 1% that is currently run by rental housing co-ops, which have very highly demonstrated evidence of success. In fact, the most successful model of this is in Victoria, where 3.4% of all social housing is this rental co-op housing model. And what that's allowed is $1 billion worth of housing portfolio to be managed by these rental housing cooperatives. And the surplus from that management is being reinvested in more housing stock. It really is a win-win. It's a win-win for community and social housing and for the tenants themselves as they move through the housing and get a step on the rung of life, if you like. We're just asking for a proportion of what is going to be applied to social housing development in Australia to be allocated to this highly successful rental model.
Melina Morrison, CEO of the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thanks again.